Hello and welcome to episode 1 of our Skaventide painting tutorials. We're starting off with the Liberators, and we've used a silver spray over a black base coat, but you could easily just use lead belcher or equivalent rattle can to get started. First up, we're going to use some Canoptek Alloy. This is to cover the chainmail skirt around the waist and upper thighs. It's a subtle change from the silver, but it will help to stand out nicely once we're done. Next up, we're going to dry brush the whole model with Necron Compound, focusing mainly on the armor panels. This should help achieve a brushed steel look, which will look nicely contrasting with the gold. Kantor Blue next for the decorative panels on the shoulder and the main area on the shield itself. Take your time to try and avoid getting any paint on the silver areas that we are not going to be covering up later, and don't stress about the rest because any mistakes will be covered up with subsequent layers of paint. Next we'll be using Khorne Red as a base for our plume. This is on the Liberator Prime as well as all of the gems and grips for the weapons. Again, try to be careful around areas like the hands or the helmet that we want to try and keep silver. Dryad Bark is going to be our base for all of the leather on the model, specifically picking out the belt, all of the clasps around the edge of the armor panels, and the scabbard on the hip. Again, try to be careful around the silver, but there's no worries, you can always cover up with the previous colours if you make a mistake. Okay, we're going to quickly apply some Basilicanum Grey here to the undersuit, which shows mainly in the back of the knees and the armpits of the model. It's a subtle step, but it will help darken these areas enough that it distinguishes it from the rest of the armour, which should be perfect for what we need to do here. Next up, we use Celestra Grey on the shoulder details and the area around the shield iconography. You can spot the point in real time here where my brain literally lags as I realize I've started painting the wrong area, but it's alright because we'll be going over it with gold shortly, no worries. We're going to use some Zandri Dust to pick out the parchment on the shield, as well as the skull detail on the base. It should go over without too much of a problem, but if you need a bit more coverage, then feel free to add a second coat. Next up is Retributor Armour. Buckle up because there's lots of it. This goes over pretty much all the bits we haven't painted yet. The shoulder pad on the prime, the trim around the armor plates, the weapon accents, as well as the settings for the gems and the crest on top of the helmet as well. These all need covering with gold, not to mention the shield icon and the trim of the shield too. This was without a doubt the longest step in painting these guys up, so feel free to put something on in the background and enjoy whilst you work through it. Okay, we're going to start shading the model now, initially using Nuln Oil. I'm mainly going to focus on the silver and blue parts of the mini at this point. Take your time, try to avoid any pooling. If it does pool, quickly clean your brush off and wick away all the excess till you're happy with it. On the shield, I've run the Nuln Oil into the recess around the edge of the blue area, which will help to frame this part going forwards. We use some Reikland Fleshshade now to cover the rest of the model, focusing on the gold areas, the red areas, and the parchment, which will help to give these a nice rich colour. If you're just looking to get your models painted to a tabletop level, just want to get them on the table, you could pretty much call these done at this point. I've only done the following steps on the prime model to help the leader of the squad stand out a bit more. Okay, to start with, we're going to take a 50-50 mix of Stormhost Silver and Retributor Armour. We're going to highlight the gold, focusing on the raised areas whilst leaving some of that rich gold colour in the recesses. Next up, we'll use Stormhost Silver on its own to highlight the golds further, as well as pick out some of the silver areas we want to focus on. Mainly the raised edges, the tips of the fingers, that kind of thing. Next, we're going to use some Evil Sunz Scarlet to highlight the plume. You're looking to pick out the raised sections or the raised clumps of the hair, leaving the deepest bits dark. We're going to take this a step further using Wild Rider Red and just start to pick out some of the individual strands of hair that really stick out to help further emphasize those. Mephiston Red is used to highlight the crisscross pattern on the weapon hilts, as well as pick out some of the gemstones. We're going to make a 50-50 mix of Dryad Bark and Zandri Dust to help highlight out the leather parts now. Nothing too fancy, just covering the raised edges on the belts, the scabbard, and all of the tassels around the armor. A 50-50 mix of Zandri Dust and Bone White from Vallejo is now going to be used for the parchment, leaving the nice dark shade that we have in the recesses and pricking out about 95% of the rest of it. We also use this on the skull on the base to help further define that as well. A white sky is then used to highlight the areas that we'd previously based with Celestra Grey. Trying to be very careful not to get any on the blue, but if you do, blue's next, so it's an easy fix. A 50-50 mix of Kantor Blue and Caledor Sky is what we're going to be using for our blue highlight. This is used to pretty much cover most of the blue, about 95% of it, leaving the darker bits on the recesses. For the shield though, we're only looking to paint a line around the blue area to frame this further. It does need to be thin, but you're going to need to paint another line inside that, so make sure you leave enough space for that. Next up, we take some Teclis Blue, and we're going to use this to edge highlight the shoulder pads, and then, as I said, we're going to paint a thin line around the edge of the blue on the shield, and you want to try and make this about half the thickness of the Kantor Blue Caledor Sky mix we used in the last step. Alright, and that is it. Make sure to base your model to fit the rest of the army. Here's some finished shots of my Prime and the other Liberators to show you the difference the extra steps have made. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, drop a comment below if you have found something useful in it, and take it easy. I will catch you on the next one. Bye bye.